Jon Machota of The Athletic from scenic Oxnard, California, where it is, is it like 40 degrees cooler than it is here right now, John?
I'll tell you what, there's a big difference between being in the sun and being in the shade. In the sun, I would say it's probably 15 degrees cooler, maybe 20. In the shade, yeah, we're getting the 40 degrees cooler for sure, especially when they get a little bit of a breeze. That's the best.
Oh, I'm living vicariously through you, John. So is Craig. We just absolutely in admiration of you being in Oxnard, a place apparently only the Cowboys know about too. So it's not, of all the places in Southern California, it's not really a tourist spot. It's there and it's great. And Ventura and all that. But John, big news at Cowboys Camp this week. Zack Martin's not there. He did send them a text that said, "See you soon." What does that mean? Or is that just encouraging, or do you think that they'll get the contract with Zack worked out and he'll be in camp here in the coming days?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be the coming days, but I think when it matters, he'll be out here. Maybe it might not be till maybe the final week they're here, but for me, with a veteran like Zack Martin, I just don't see him missing games. And ultimately, as long as he's out there for games, let Josh Ball and Matt Farniak and others get work at right guard. And Zack will be ready for week one against the Giants. That's the most important thing. And I just can't see him missing games. So he hasn't missed anything out here so far. I mean, it's just been walkthrough stuff. They don't get in the pads until Monday, but, don't get me wrong. You would prefer him to be here. But just getting a sense from being around the players the last couple of days, they all understand where he's coming from. They know how, elite he is, and they believe that much like him, he deserves a little bit more money than he's making. So we'll see where it goes. But like I said, ultimately, I don't see him missing games, and that's what matters.
So have you seen anything that's hopped off the page at you the first couple days, even though you said they're not doing anything?
You know, the biggest one, and for anybody that follows any, NFL training camp or anything right now this time of year, the things that are going to stand out the most are obviously any injuries, but then the other thing is offensive skill position, like your wide receivers and things like that. That's what does the most traction on social media, the videos and things like that. And it is pretty noticeable that Jaylen Tolbert looks like he's ready to make that leap from really not contributing very much at all last year during his rookie season to being the front runner to be that number 4 guy for them, behind Brandon Cooks and CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup. And I mean, one injury and all of a sudden, he steps in and he's getting a lot more playing time. And so you might think, oh, number 4 receiver, that's not a big of a deal. Well, in today's NFL, that is. And they're going to give him every opportunity to get that. And it just seems like, just his body language, the way he's been lining up, he's been pretty sure-handed. It just seems like he's in the right places and is just, completely locked in. And that's huge for him because, they need something from him. Noah Brown's not here anymore, and they need more out of Jaylen Tolbert than they got last year, obviously using a 3rd-round pick on him. But he would be one guy, and then an undrafted guy, receiver, Jalen Moreno-Cropper. There's just some plays that he's made out here already, and, obviously they're not tackling, and it's not, full tilt like we'll get into Monday, but kind of a right guy, in the right place, right time type thing. And there is totally an opportunity for a guy like that to make this squad, but that would probably be the biggest thing. That it's just too difficult to make a big, blanket. Oh wow, look at how this offensive lineman or defensive lineman's playing. I mean, obviously Micah Parsons is blown by everybody, but for the most part, it'd be those guys.
John, Donovan Wilson out for a few weeks. May be ready for the start of the season, but do you think that means more Marquise Bell, and they see what they have with him?
Absolutely. He was the first one up in practice. And, going into this training camp, I had heard that they were very high on him and, got him into the mix, last year a little bit, undrafted guy. And there's no question that this is going to be a big opportunity for him. And also with Israel Muklamu out for a few weeks as well. So those guys should be back, like you said, for week one. But, yeah, Marquise Bell is the number 1 guy, the next man up. And it's really an interesting thing when you look at the safety position here because, we had talked about this a few years ago where it was probably the least amount of investments put in any position of any team in the NFL, the Cowboys at the safety position. And now all of a sudden, you got J. Ron Curse and Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson, Israel Mukwamu, Marquise Bell. So there's a lot of bodies there. If you're going to have to absorb an area with a few injuries that aren't long-term, safety is certainly one of them for this team.
John, do you think linebacker, running back was where they may add here in the coming weeks if they don't like what they see past the first couple guys?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would probably lean a little bit more towards a running back, and that would just be if, it just doesn't look like anybody is on that level to be the number 2 guy behind Tony Pollard. But even there, I kind of feel like they're going to let it play out through at least some preseason games and see how those guys work there. Even if Tony Pollard was 100% healthy and didn't get injured last year, he's not a guy that's going to get many touches in the preseason anyway. So it's always going to be about those backup running backs, but it means a lot more this year because that player that kind of wins that job, and maybe it is a committee, but I think it'll be one guy kind of emerges, whether it be Ronald Jones or Malik Davis or Deuce Vaughn, or maybe it's a guy that's not on the roster yet. That is going to be a spot to watch during the preseason because it could be a pretty valuable one here. As far as linebacker, it's just pretty clear cut. It's Leighton Vander Esch and Damone Clark as your starters, and then behind them, the next 2 up are probably Jabril Cox and DeMarvion Overshown, who they took in the 3rd round. You ask any of the coaches about Overshown, and they just can't say enough about how he's been preparing and what they've seen from him behind the scenes. And so I think they feel better there than, last year at this time when, they went out and signed Anthony Barr.
John, what's realistic, expectation-wise, and just what have been your takeaways from seeing Deuce Vaughn? I saw a clip. It might have been on your timeline the other day, and we obviously know he's not the biggest guy in the world, but it was just like, man, it's just crazy to see him out against NFL guys. What have you thought about what you've seen and what it all means in the long run?
So from what I've seen, he certainly looks the part of the guy that, we all saw at Kansas State, where it's not like he was one of the bigger players on the field then. He was still that same size, and he was able to do a ton of damage. And so from what we've seen so far, you get that part of it. The one thing is that I want to see, obviously, when the pads come on is, when we talked to Mike McCarthy the other day, one of the things he told us about in terms of, noticeable changes you might see in the offense is what they do in their pass protection. And I'm interested to see how, Deuce Vaughn picks up a blitz or in those type of situations just because he is a smaller guy like that. Those parts of it, there's going to be parts of his game that because of his size, he can only do so much. But I do think if you can get him the ball in space, it could pay some huge dividends. So, and it's just very clear, that he is a fan favorite right now. And then obviously they're going to give him every opportunity to get the ball a ton during the preseason. So, as I've seen him so far, like I said, it's very easy if you're standing out here. You don't need to know anything about football. You can bring a friend out here who has never even seen football being played, and probably within 10, 15 minutes, they would ask, why is that number 42 so much smaller than everybody else? It just jumps off the tape. But like I said, we've seen what he did at Kansas State. You got to give the guy the benefit of the doubt.
Jon Machota of The Athletic. John, go make sure you have a quarter zip on. I don't want you to catch cold.
I appreciate it. I'll do that.
Jon Machota of The Athletic from Oxnard, California, with his